So who better to have on than Mark Fields, former CEO of Ford, CNBC contributor. Mark, kind of a rapid fire here. First Brands in particular is really rocking parts of Wall Street. I don't want to get into the whole story, but how big of a deal is this?
A huge deal as it pertains to the auto industry. It's a big deal when you look at credit and how credit's been taken out over the last couple of years.
But car loans, Mark, are being paid later. Repossessions, they are on the rise. They have been for a couple of years, but they keep going up. You know, the average price of a new car is like 50 grand now.
Ford is recalling about 58,000 of Focus cars in America. Ford wants to fix a powertrain software issue that could cause the fuel tank to become deformed.
Ford is in a death spiral, not a slump, not a rough quarter, a death spiral, and it is picking up speed. $4 billion in losses, over 100 recalls and still counting. And right now, across America, Ford dealerships are drowning in trucks that nobody is buying. We are talking about F-150s, the best-selling truck in this country for over 40 straight years, sitting on lots for 700, 800 days, collecting dust, bleeding money, while the dealers who stocked them quietly go bankrupt, trying to survive it. Here is what makes this terrifying. Ford knows, the executives know, the dealers know, and they are still pricing these trucks at $100,000. So the question you need to ask yourself before you walk into any Ford dealership right now is this. If the people selling you this truck are going broke trying to move it, what does that say about what happens to you after you buy it? Here is how it actually happened. Ford's EV division, the one they called Model E, the one they bet the entire future of the company on, has lost over $4 billion. Not projected losses, not accounting estimates, not a rounding error buried in a quarterly slide. $4 billion, confirmed in Ford's own financial filings, in black and white, available to anyone willing to look. And here is what most people do not understand about a number that large. It does not stay contained. It does not sit quietly in one corner of a balance sheet while everything else runs normally. When a manufacturer bleeds $4 billion, that pressure moves. It flows downstream. It lands on the dealers. It lands on the pricing. And eventually, it lands on you, sitting across from a salesperson who is still smiling like everything is completely fine. The first place you see it is the inventory. Ford dealerships right now are not just full. They are overwhelmed. We are talking about vehicles that arrived months ago, still sitting exactly where the transport truck left them. 2023 models. 2024 models. Still on the lot in 2026. 700 days. 800 days. Unsold, depreciating, and costing money. Every single morning, the sun comes up on that lot. That is not a slow sales week. That is a structural collapse, hiding in plain sight behind a logo that everyone recognizes. And Ford knows it. Because Ford quietly started paying its own dealers to offset the cost of all that stalled inventory. They call it floor plan assistance. What it actually is a manufacturer sending checks to its own sales network just to keep the lights on. Think about what that tells you. When a company has to financially support the people selling its product just to keep them from going under, that is not a bump in the road. That is the road ending. Now connect those dots to what you pay when you walk through that dealership door. Every dollar Ford spends propping up inventory that will not move gets baked into the price of the truck that will. The buyer who actually shows up and signs becomes the one carrying the weight of the crisis. You are not just buying a vehicle. You are funding the cleanup from a $4 billion disaster you had absolutely nothing to do with. The $4 billion number sounds like a Ford problem. It sounds like something happening in a glass boardroom far away from your driveway. It is not. It became your problem the exact same moment you sat down across from a salesperson and they started talking about monthly payments. Let's talk about the Recall King, not a nickname Ford gave itself. A title the data handed them whether they wanted it or not. Over 100 recalls. And before you tell yourself that every manufacturer has recalls, that this is just how the industry works, stop. Because there is a difference between a recall and a pattern. Ford crossed that line a long time ago and keeps moving further past it. The failures are not random. They cluster in 3 specific places: transmissions, engines, software. Those are not minor systems. Those are the 3 things a vehicle absolutely cannot function without. And those are the 3 places Ford keeps breaking down, model after model, year after year, as if the lesson from the last recall never made it back to the factory floor. The Mustang Mach-E tells you everything you need to know about how deep this goes. Ford issued a complete stop-sale recall on that vehicle. Not a fix-it-when-you-can notice. A stop sale. Dealers were legally prohibited from selling units sitting right there on their lots. While floor plan interest kept accumulating on every single day, those vehicles could not move. Dealers absorbing the cost of a problem they did not create. Sound familiar? Then, Ford's own CEO stood up and confirmed something that should have made every current Ford owner stop cold. There are not enough certified technicians at Ford dealerships to handle the volume of recalled vehicles coming in. Not enough. The company selling you a $100,000 truck does not have enough people trained to fix it when the recall notice inevitably arrives in your mailbox. So here is what that actually looks like in your life. You spend $80,000 on a new F-150. 6 months later, a recall notice shows up. You call your dealer. The first available service appointment is 6 weeks out, maybe 8. You are still making payments. You are still paying insurance. You are driving a vehicle with a documented defect because the infrastructure to fix it simply does not exist at the scale Ford needs it to. Some buyers get a loaner vehicle while they wait. Many do not. Either way, the payment does not pause. The insurance does not pause. The clock does not pause for anyone except you. And here's the part that nobody at the dealership will ever voluntarily explain. Buyers rationalize recall risk exactly the same way they rationalize a payment that is slightly too high. They tell themselves it will not happen to them. It will be fine. They got a good one. The recall data says otherwise. And the recall data does not care how optimistic you felt when you drove off the lot. Now let's talk about the number that should stop every single person considering a Ford purchase completely in their tracks. $100,000. That is not the top of some limited edition collector's trim that 3 people in the country will ever see. That is a price point you will encounter at a standard Ford dealership on a standard Tuesday afternoon shopping for an F-150. The truck that built its entire identity on being the vehicle of the American working person has crossed 6 figures and kept going like it was nothing. This did not happen by accident. Ford made a deliberate decision to exit affordable vehicles entirely. No more small cars. No more entry-level options for buyers who need reliable transportation without a mortgage-sized payment attached to it. Trucks and SUVs only, priced for maximum margin, because that is where the profit lives. That strategy made sense on a spreadsheet. What it did to real buyers is a different story entirely. Then came the EcoBoost push. Ford moved aggressively to turbocharged engines across almost the entire lineup. They sold it as innovation, as efficiency, as modern engineering. What it also did was add a premium price point to every vehicle carrying that badge while introducing an engine architecture with a reliability track record that has raised serious questions from mechanics and owners alike. More complexity under the hood means more things that can go wrong. And when things go wrong on a turbocharged engine, the repair bill does not feel like innovation at all. Then Ford ran their employee pricing promotion. They put it everywhere, making it feel like an event. Buyers rushed into dealerships convinced they were finally getting the deal they had been waiting for. Many of them sat down, ran the actual numbers, and realized that $10,000 off a $120,000 truck is not a deal. It is theater. The price had climbed so far past reasonable that the discount barely registered against the reality of what they were still being asked to pay. And Ford dealerships discount less aggressively than any other domestic manufacturer. General Motors is moving metal with real money off. Ram is cutting deep to compete. Ford is offering floor mats and calling it a promotion. Run the complete number before you sit down. The payment your salesperson quotes is the smallest and most flattering version of what this truck actually costs. Add insurance on a high-value, full-size vehicle. Add fuel on a large displacement engine that is not sipping anything. Add a realistic maintenance reserve. Add the recall buffer that every Ford buyer in 2026 needs to be building. Ford stopped building a truck for the person who needs one. They started building a truck for the person who wants to be seen in one. The price tag proves it. Here is something the headlines are not covering because it does not fit neatly into a single dramatic story. The people Ford relies on to actually sell its vehicles are being quietly destroyed by the same crisis, eating the manufacturer from the inside out. Walk into any Ford dealership right now and pay attention to what you are actually looking at. Not the showroom, the lot. Because the lot tells the real story. Vehicles lined up row after row that arrived months ago and have not moved. Not because the dealership is waiting for the right buyer, because the right buyer is not coming. 2023 models, 2024 models. Still sitting there in 2026, exactly where the transport truck dropped them, while every single day that passes costs the dealer money they are running out of. This is how dealer financing works. When a dealership stocks a vehicle, they borrow money to do it. They pay interest on that loan for every day that vehicle sits unsold on their lot. That arrangement is called floor plan financing, and it works perfectly when inventory moves at a normal pace. When inventory stalls for 700 days, 800 days, it stops being a financing arrangement and starts being a slow execution. Ford saw this coming, and Ford's response was to begin sending dealers financial assistance to offset those carrying costs. Floor plan support payments flowing from the manufacturer directly to the sales network, just to keep dealerships solvent enough to stay open. That sounds like a lifeline. What it actually is confirmation that the problem is severe enough that dealers cannot survive it on their own. You do not send emergency financial support to a network that is doing fine. The dealers getting hit hardest are not the massive auto groups with dozens of locations and deep capital reserves to absorb the bleeding. It is the smaller single-point dealers, family operations that have sold Ford vehicles for 20, 30, 40 years. These are the ones going under first. Quietly, without a press release, without anyone outside their community noticing until the sign comes down. When a dealer closes, the consequences for buyers are not abstract. Service contracts become complicated to honor. Warranty work gets redirected to locations that are already overwhelmed. The support infrastructure you assumed was there when you signed your paperwork simply disappears. And as smaller dealers collapse, larger auto groups absorb them. Less competition, less negotiating leverage for you as a buyer. Higher effective prices across the board as the market consolidates around the survivors. Ford's dealer network was supposed to be its greatest competitive advantage. Thousands of locations, nationwide coverage, a support system built over a century. Right now, it is becoming the most visible proof that something has gone very wrong. There is a third actor in this story, and most buyers never see them coming. Not Ford the manufacturer, not the dealership, Ford Financial. The lending arm that exists for one specific purpose, to make loans happen that the math would otherwise prevent. To get buyers into vehicles at price points they cannot organically afford, using a single number carefully engineered to feel manageable, while everything attached to it stays carefully hidden. That number is the monthly payment, not the total cost of the loan, not the interest you will pay over the full term, not what the truck will be worth in 3 years compared to what you still owe. Just the monthly payment. Clean, simple, digestible. $499 a month sounds like something a person can handle. What Ford Financial does not volunteer is what $499 a month looks like stretched across 84 months at a high interest rate on a vehicle losing value every single day It sits in your driveway. 84-month loans are now standard. Some buyers are signing 96-month terms, 8 years of payments. Think about that for a moment. You will be making payments on this truck when it is 8 years old, has 100,000 miles on it, and is worth a fraction of what you borrowed. But the balance does not shrink at the same rate the value does. That gap between what you owe and what the vehicle is worth is called being underwater, and Ford Financial's lending structure practically guarantees it. Finance a $75,000 truck at a high interest rate over 84 months, and within 18 months, you owe significantly more than the truck is worth. You cannot sell it without bringing cash to the table. You cannot trade it without rolling that negative equity into the next loan and starting the cycle over again. You are trapped, not by accident, by design. And this connects directly to why the F-150 sits among the most repossessed vehicles in America. Not despite being the best-selling truck in the country, because of it. Volume plus aggressive financing plus buyers stretched past their actual limit equals a repossession crisis hiding inside a sales record. The numbers are not contradictory. They are the same story told from two different angles. The buyer who never had a chance was approved by Ford Financial in month 1, made the payment, felt fine, then insurance renewed higher, then fuel prices moved, then one unexpected bill arrived at the worst possible moment. Then the tow truck showed up before sunrise. Ford Financial does not lose when you default. They repo the truck, sell it at auction, and come after you for the difference. The math works perfectly, for them. Here is the part that Ford's marketing department would very much prefer you never think about too carefully. The recall volume is not an accident. The reliability questions are not a streak of bad luck. The technician shortage is not an oversight that slipped through the cracks of an otherwise well-run organization. When you pull back far enough to see the whole picture, a very different explanation starts to take shape. One that is far more deliberate than anyone at Ford will ever stand in front of a camera and admit. Ford is not building these vehicles for long-term reliability. The evidence is too consistent and too recurring to call it anything else. Getting a vehicle to market faster means less time for quality validation, less testing, less refinement, more recalls after the sale instead of fewer problems before it. And here is the part that changes everything once you understand it. A vehicle built to last 20 years sells once. A vehicle built to need constant attention sells parts, sells service contracts, sells loaner arrangements, sells replacements. It generates revenue at every single stage of the ownership cycle, not just at the moment of sale. The EcoBoost engine tells this story clearly. Ford pushed turbocharged engines across almost the entire lineup and charged a premium for the privilege. More complexity under the hood means more components that can fail. More specialized repairs that only certified Ford technicians can perform. More dependency on Ford's own parts ecosystem long after the sale is complete. That is not an engineering coincidence. That is a business model wearing an engineering costume. The executives making these decisions are not making them carelessly. They are maximizing revenue per vehicle at every stage. The initial sale, the warranty service visits, the out-of-warranty repairs, the eventual replacement purchase from a buyer who has been conditioned to stay inside the Ford ecosystem because walking away feels complicated. And the buyers most vulnerable to all of this are not strangers to the brand. They are the loyal ones, the people who have bought Ford their entire lives, whose fathers drove Ford, whose identity has some part of itself wrapped up in that oval badge on the hood. That loyalty is being used against them in the most calculated way possible, because a loyal buyer rationalizes. A loyal buyer gives the benefit of the doubt. A loyal buyer signs the paperwork on a vehicle with a documented recall history and tells themselves this one will be different. Brand loyalty is the most expensive thing a Ford buyer owns right now. More expensive than the truck, more expensive than the loan, more expensive than every recall repair combined. This is not a company that lost its way. This is a company that found a very profitable new one, and you are the product. So here is where everything shifts. Because this script is not ending with a verdict against Ford and nothing else. That would leave you with outrage and no direction. And outrage without direction just costs you money at the dealership. The data that makes this situation look grim for Ford is the exact same data that hands you leverage if you know how to use it. Start with the inventory reality. Lots overflowing with vehicles sitting 700, 800 days unsold means the power in that negotiation has moved. It moved away from the dealership and toward you, whether the salesperson across the table acknowledges it or not. Dealers carrying floor plan interest on aging inventory need to move metal. That pressure is yours to use. Even Raptors, the models dealerships were adding markup to just a few years ago, can be had below MSRP at the right location if you walk in knowing the inventory age of the specific unit you are looking at. Which brings you to the single most important question you can ask before you sit down. What is the current inventory age on this specific vehicle? If the answer is over 90 days, you have leverage. If they will not answer directly, that is also an answer. Use both pieces of information accordingly, then refuse the add-ons. Ford dealerships are still running documentation fees, protection packages, paint sealants, and dealer-installed accessories on vehicles that should be competing on price alone. These are not value. They are margin recovery dressed up as convenience. Every single one of them is negotiable, and most of them are removable entirely if you are willing to walk toward the door. Now run the complete number before you sign anything, not the monthly payment. The complete number. Take the purchase price. Add the total interest over the full loan term. Add realistic insurance costs on a high-value full-size vehicle. Add fuel on a large displacement engine. Add a maintenance reserve that accounts for the recall history you now know about. Add a realistic projection of what this vehicle will be worth in 3 years compared to what you will still owe. That last number matters more than any other figure in the conversation. A vehicle entering a period of brand-level credibility questions loses resale value faster than the market average. Buying at peak price in 2026 and trying to sell or trade in 2029 is a financial scenario you need to model before you commit, not after. The data is public. The inventory numbers are visible on every lot you can drive past. The recall records are documented and searchable by anyone with a phone. The only thing standing between you and a very expensive mistake is whether you walked in carrying that information or whether you left it in the car. Ford built an empire on a promise. The promise of American toughness, of reliability, of a truck that would work as hard as the person driving it. That promise sold more vehicles than any other manufacturer in this country for over 40 consecutive years. It was not just marketing. For a long time, it was true. That promise is being broken right now in real time, not in a boardroom, not in a financial filing, on dealer lots across America where trucks sit unsold for 800 days, in service bays that do not have enough technicians to handle the recall volume pouring in the driveways of buyers who signed paperwork on a $100,000 vehicle and are now discovering what that decision actually costs when the full weight of it lands on their monthly budget all at once. $4 billion in loss. Over 100 recalls. Dealers going under quietly, while the manufacturer sends checks just to keep the network breathing. Floor plan assistance flowing to dealerships that should be thriving. Buyers trapped in 84-month loans on vehicles worth less every single day than what they still owe. These are not predictions about where Ford might be heading. This is the current state of the most recognized truck brand in the country. Documented, confirmed, and visible to anyone willing to look past the commercial and read the actual numbers. The buyers who will walk away from this moment unharmed are the ones who walked in carrying data instead of brand loyalty. The ones who asked about inventory age before they asked about color options. The ones who ran the complete 5-year cost before they focused on the monthly payment. The ones who understood that a badge on a hood is not a financial plan and that the dealership's job is to move metal, not protect your future. The buyers who will get hurt are the ones who let a payment number and 40 years of name recognition make the decision for them. The ones who told themselves the recalls would not happen to their truck. The ones who signed a 96-month loan on a depreciating asset because the salesperson made the monthly number feel manageable. The death spiral is real. It is accelerating. And it is entirely avoidable if you walk through that dealership door carrying the right information instead of the right feelings. Before you step foot on any Ford lot, download the free ebook, Avoid These 17 Cars in 2026. Depreciation data, reliability scores, the exact models mechanics see on their lifts week after week. Link is in the description. Download it, read it, then go negotiate. The repo man is already busy enough. Do not make his job any easier.